vision. Chalk in hand, he's on a mission, shaping dreams with precision. Joseph, the English teacher.
Hi everyone, and welcome again to another Teacher Joseph podcast. Back in the 1980s, radio presenting was very different from today because you had to use the Queen's English. Life was not quite so visual, so voices were able to stimulate us probably much more than today. There wasn't any AI in those days, and people were often reading from scripts. We're going to listen to a voice now of Marie Collett. Then we're going to talk a bit more about her and her presentation style. She was something of a celebrity across the south of England because she brought us the British Airways travel news on many of the radio stations around Heathrow Airport. There were quite a few in those days. She was also an accomplished actress. But before we go any further, let's listen to her
And
voice.
for air travellers at Heathrow and Gatwick, no reports of any difficulties, and elsewhere on the domestic network it's the same story. In the Middle East, Beirut Airport still closed, and also Lebanese airspace. There are no long delays on British Airways intercontinental arrivals this morning. Finally, services from Miami, Detroit, Washington and Montreal and Singapore Airlines are all on or close to schedule. Marie Collett at British Airways.
That was the voice of Marie Collett. She was reading the British Airways travel announcements for LBC radio. And in those days, they had a kind of a shared system. So her voice appeared not only on LBC, but on many of the other radio stations in the southeast of England also. So no matter what you were listening to, her voice often popped up. Marie Collett became something of a celebrity. Her voice was unusual in that it had a interesting range which went up and down as she spoke. Also, British women in the 1980s, not only those who were working in radio, they just sounded different. Women had a deeper voice in those days, and it was considered to be something not overtly sexual, but something very attractive. And therefore, Marie Collett's voice drew a lot of attention. A lot of people were very drawn to her because she sounded authoritative, she sounded maternal, and a French name with a voice that went up and down led people to speculate about who she was, where she came from, as well as what she might have looked like. It's kind of unusual for these things to happen today, although I do remember in Edinburgh railway station in Scotland, I think around 10, maybe more years ago, they employed a French lady to give announcements. And they had to stop it because people were just stopping to listen to her. People weren't moving. It was, ooh, that's a nice voice. So you see, accents and voices are incredibly powerful. Now we're going to talk more about Marie Collett and her presentation style. So, of course, there's her image. She has this French name. She has a voice which sounds a little bit French. I'm not sure why that was associated with France in those days, but the truth of the matter is she was from New Zealand, and you can hear little bits of that in her voice if you listen closely. But before we start talking about her presentation, let's just listen to her again for a moment.
And for air travellers at Heathrow and Gatwick, no reports of any difficulties, and elsewhere on the domestic network it's the same story. In the Middle East, Beirut Airport still closed and also Lebanese airspace. There are no long delays on British Airways intercontinental arrivals this morning. Finally, services from Miami, Detroit, Washington and Montreal and Singapore Airlines are all on or close to schedule. Marie Collett at British Airways.
Right, the adjectives I would use to describe her voice. Warm, friendly, slightly authoritative. We mentioned earlier maternal. So she had all the boxes ticked. She sounded very, very good. Her presentation here sounded a little bit rushed, and she's obviously reading from a script. I think another thing which worked in her favor is she was talking about international journeys. She's talking about, and I don't remember the countries that she mentioned there, maybe Lebanon, Singapore. And the way she does this, she's not being seductive about it, but because she is bringing in something international, it means we've, in our minds, all built up this image of her as being like an air hostess, someone who travels around the world. And of course, we don't know if that's actually true. One thing which is true, though, is her beautiful presentation in the way that she joins her words together. Now, she doesn't have a lot of space to do that because she's put firmly into a 30-second or 1 minute segment, and she can't go off script with that. So she's reading very clearly. But it does show, though, that she's talking from her chest. The only way you can get that voice to go up and down is to be very, very hard on your body, which gives you that stern kind of sound. Right now, I'm very relaxed. I'm just sitting here. But if I did talk from my chest, it would sound a little bit more forced if I had to say something, even in my usual voice. So you can hear there, as you constrict your chest, your voice would fluctuate anyway. For example, if I had to talk about airlines for a few minutes, you can hear there that if you put a lot of tension just here, then your voice is going to go up and down. It's very funny because I can't imagine anyone doing that these days in the name of success. Now, of course, it is entirely possible that Marie Collett just had a voice that sounded like that, but it does sound incredibly forced. We don't know what happened to Marie Collett. She disappeared. She continued to act, and I know she was doing audio books as late as I think 2010, but she would be 86 years old now. It would be great to have an interview with her just to discuss her time in radio, but I'm not even sure if she's still around. It would be lovely if she was. It wasn't just her, there were others also. I mean, actresses like Joanna Lumley, Alexandra Bastido, for example, these all had very husky voices, perhaps not with the same intonation, but women in those days, as I mentioned earlier, they just sounded different. There was something very attractive about the woman's voice, which was a little bit deeper. Getting back to the presentation style of Marie Collett, one thing that you can really, really hear there is professionalism. And again, that's something which is really missing. And I think that's something which comes with age. Clearly, she was around 50 when this was recorded, if she was born in 1938. And these days, well, I don't know about you, but I don't know of any 50-year-old women who work in the radio industry reading travel news. They all seem to be very, very young. One voice which does come to mind, though, is Charlotte Green. She was reading news on BBC Radio 4. She's still around somewhere. She reads, I think, the sports news on one of the other channels, somebody told me. I don't know, but she's been reading those since I was a child, so she must be retired by now, I think. Anyway, that's Marie Collett, a different era of broadcasting with the Queen's English, when you weren't allowed to feel quite as relaxed and comfortable as you would be today. Well, Marie Collett was the subject of a lot of humour in the 1980s, of people speculating exactly what she looked like, who she was, and that was a big thing back then. I hope you've enjoyed this. Take care. Bye.